In July 1995, firefighters discovered the charred remains of a woman in an empty home in Nashville, Tennessee. Police later identified the woman as 35-year-old Joyce Goodner, who had been stabbed and beaten to death. Afterward, the murderer had placed her body in a rug before setting it on fire. Police arrested James Washington for the murder. He knew Joyce and even admitted that he saw her on the day she died. However, police could not pin the murder on him as there was no DNA evidence at the crime scene. Things changed in 2009 when James Washington suffered a heart attack while serving a 15-year sentence for attempted murder. Fearing that he was going to die, Washington called a nearby guard, James Tomlinson, and confessed to the 1995 murder. Things went south for Washington when the heart attack didn't prove fatal. Tomlinson informed authorities about the confession and Washington was charged with murder. Washington recanted the confession and claimed that he was hallucinating at the time. Unfortunately, it was too late. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. In 2006, Tony Wakeford suffered a life-threatening illness caused by Parkinson's disease. Thinking he was going to die, he called his wife Patricia and confessed to having an affair with her best friend. Patricia did not complain and patiently listened to all he had to say. That was near anyway, she probably thought. They were wrong. Tony survived. However, Patricia could not contain the pain of betrayal by her husband. This came to a head on September 4, 2010, when she murdered him in their Effingham, Surrey home. Afterwards, she called 999 and claimed that her husband had attacked her during a fight. Police arrived to find Tony's remains. He had multiple stab wounds on his arms, hands, and legs. However, the one that proved fatal was delivered straight into his heart. Patricia insisted that Tony had attacked her first, even though investigators believed that she had murdered Tony in a fit of jealousy. A neighbor also told investigators that he had heard Patricia repeat the words, "I hate you," for about 10 minutes on the day before the murder. Patricia was arrested for murder. However, she got lucky after the court reduced the charge to manslaughter. She received a 582-day sentence but was freed because she had already spent 291 days in prison. In 2009, Michael Anderson suffered a stroke that he believed was going to kill him. At the hospital, he revealed that he was actually 58-year-old James Brewer. He had changed his name around 30 years earlier after he was declared wanted in Tennessee for murder of his neighbor Jimmy Carroll. James shot Carroll to death outside a gas station over suspicions that Carroll was trying to have an affair with James' wife, who later changed her name to Dorothy Anderson. James Brewer was arrested for the murder but fled with his wife right after he was released on bail. They went to Oklahoma, where they changed their names and started a new life. James told the police that he had decided to confess because he wanted to cleanse his soul before dying. James was so sure that his time was up that even his wife could not stop his confession. Fortunately for justice, James survived the stroke and was charged with murder. In 2015, a 91-year-old British man living in Canada confessed to murdering a woman outside a nightclub on Carnaby Street, Soho, UK in 1946. This is considered the longest period between a crime and confession in British criminal history. The unidentified man offered the confession at a Canadian police station right after he was diagnosed with cancer. Canadian officers informed the British police, who promptly sent investigators to interrogate the man. The victim was a prostitute whose name the British man could not recall. However, he remembered that he had shot her to death with a pistol. When British officers showed him pictures of several women, the man identified his victim. She had been a 26-year-old prostitute called Margaret Cook. Police had never arrested a suspect in Cook's murder, even though the man had remained in Britain for 5 years before relocating to Canada. Canadian police offers to extradite the man to the UK. However, Canadian judges refused to honor the extradition because the man was too old. They also thought that a trial was unnecessary because the murder would have remained unsolved if the man had not confessed. In 1988, British police found the remains of a gruesomely murdered woman in a flat in Cardiff, UK. The woman had over 50 stab wounds on her body. She was later identified as a 20-year-old prostitute called Lynette White. In 1990, Tony Perez, Yusuf Abdullahi, and Stephen Miller received life sentences for the murder. However, they were released 2 years later after the advancements in DNA technology proved they were innocent. A few years later, police turned their radar on a man called Jeffrey Gaffour. In 2003, The 38-year-old Ghafoor somehow realized that he was under police surveillance. He visited several stores where he purchased large amounts of paracetamol tablets. He swallowed the tablets when he returned home that night. Police broke into his home at that moment and arrested him. Ghafoor confessed to the murder as an ambulance transported him to a hospital. He added that he had been awaiting capture for 15 years and really wanted to die. Ghafoor was already convulsing when he arrived at the hospital, and for once it seemed like he was really going to die. That never happened, and he went on to make a full recovery. Ghafoor did not recant his confession. However, he said he no longer wanted to die and was prepared to face the consequences for his action. He added that he had previously considered death to discover if God and the devil really existed. Ghafoor confessed that he had murdered White during an argument over 30 pounds. He received a life sentence and had to spend 13 years in prison before he could be considered for parole. In 2018, a cancer patient at Auckland City Hospital in New Zealand informed a doctor that he had some confessions to make. He added that he would only disclose the information on condition that the doctor promised never to tell anyone else. The doctor agreed. The man, identified only with the pseudonym Sean, claimed that he had been a gun for hire who was responsible for several murders across New Zealand in the 1960s. The unidentified doctor later encouraged Sean to write a confession for the police in case he died. It is unclear if Sean wrote that letter or not. The doctor kept the secret anyway. However, police learned about Sean after several medical and law researchers published a paper discussing the moral and legal consequences of keeping such secrets. The paper generated a controversy that split medical practitioners into two groups. One supported the doctor who kept the secret, while the other wanted the doctor to reveal it. The supportive group noted that secrets should not be revealed because they are considered a sort of bond between doctors and their patients. The group also mentioned that Sean's condition improved after the confession. He was able to walk and eat, two things he could not do before the confession. His health also improved significantly, and doctors even had to reduce the amounts of painkiller he received. In fact, Sean was discharged and sent to a nursing home for palliative care where he later died.